Chris Duffin, sitting down here with Leroy Walker and Coach Brandon Senn, and we're going to have a little chat today about game day psychology, that mental prep, that how do you get yourself, and not just, and when I say game day, it's not just getting yourself psyched for when you're at the meet, but how do you approach your training on those big days, every day that you walk into the gym? How do you transition the mindset and the things that you've got to think about in your training process to set yourself up so that you have the success that you need when it's time to prove it? And Leroy has some thoughts that align really well with some of the themes and philosophy behind the Kabuki Strength team, the get your squat face on. Now, Leroy is a bencher, but it's the exact same thought process, right? I mean, well, hell, you're benching more than most people squat. So, yeah. But I'm going to step out, and Brandon's going to take over on the interview here and touch on those themes, and probably might touch on some other training topics as well. But I just wanted to give a little intro and leave it at that. So, gentlemen, have at it.
All right. Brandon here with the Kabuki Strength team. We're sitting with Leroy Walker. So if you don't know, Leroy does some pretty insane stuff, right? I actually got to see him crush a 675 bench in the gym, albeit with a slingshot. But, you know, I think most of the people who are handling those kind of weights are in gear, right? Yeah. It's Leroy is one of the top 5 benchers in the world currently. And to see him do some of that is absolutely insane. So what I want to know about is what actually goes through your head? You know, what do you have to think about in order to hold that weight above your body? You know, people even psych themselves out squatting that kind of weight or even deadlifting it, and there's not as much risk as physically holding it in your hands. You know, and we talked about people who are doing that with gear. You know, there's some, you know, a lot of them are going a lot heavier than that too, but there is some supportiveness that you can feel that's like, oh, you know, I have this safety. But with you, you know, what do you have to actually go through in order to prepare your mind for kind of lift like that?
That's a good question. I think it all has to do with, first off, it doesn't just happen. You know, there's a process. It's planned out. I think if you were to talk to anybody in any sport or any discipline that does anything that's extraordinary or above average or above normal, there's a certain amount of psyche that goes into it. But I think there's also a certain amount of preparation that has to go into it as well, a certain amount of preparation that enables you to stay calm, familiarity with the process of what you're about to do, so you can internalize it and so you can wrap your head around it. Say, for example, I'll do some pieces where, you know, I'll talk about mental prep on Sunday. You know, sometimes I'll post stuff I've done in the past to kind of help me start getting, and it becomes a process where my big bench day is usually Monday nights. I try to make sure it's Monday night religiously. I'll start off the day, I'll start off, you know, Sunday night. I'll have a good meal, good prep work. I'll lay the foundation. I'll look at my stats, see what I did the week before, and then I'll just start to prep. And each week, I want to try to take it, you know, 10, maybe 20 pounds higher than I did the week before. And it's not necessarily to go into the gym and always hit a 1-rep PR. It's because even if I fail, I want to see where I failed at. And it's more conducive to see if my tricep work was firing right, to see if the speed work, if I'm laying the foundations on the other days other than just the heavy day. Because you can't just lift heavy one day and progress and get better week by week. There has to be other parts, other aspects that you hone in on. So fast forward to the night of, you know, 7 o'clock, gym time rolls around. And this is something people have got to realize. It starts, like I said, on Sunday night, but it starts way before that. It starts with during the day. You know, a lot of people, we all work. We all have, you know, different stuff we have to do, whether it's jobs or not. And if you're going to do this seriously, you have to almost kind of pick a day that you're going to have the day off so you can be clear and free of any other distractions, both physically and mentally. So when I say 7 o'clock comes around, I started mentally prepping at 5. Yeah. I had my carbs. I had my protein. I had my other supplements. I made sure my spotters, everything's going to be in line. So when 7 o'clock comes, there's a calmness. it's a routine. It's almost like I'll tell people, I'll use the analogy kind of like Apollo 13. You got to prepare for the worst. But in the sense, you see, Tom Hanks was able to stay calm because astronauts or airplane, there's a certain check they go through, engines. And if you do everything with a systematic check off, if you have a list, it becomes systematic. And as it becomes systematic, it then becomes automatic to the point where you're not so conscious of it. Now, sure, is there times when I'll stare at the bar and I'll see 7 plates, 14 plates total? It's a daunting feeling. Sometimes it becomes overwhelming.
Yeah.
But you prepare for that.
Yeah.
You take precautions in your everyday approach, and you have to have people, on an emotional level that are supportive, as well as a physical and a spotter level. You can't be cocky or arrogant enough to think that it's all you.
Right.
Every great lifter, no matter who you are, has a team of people that have helped them get to where they are. And I'm not above admitting that. And I also know with acknowledging that, you have to be able to recognize what your limits are. It's great to say, I have a great supporting team, I want to try 800. Is it realistic? Is it stupid? Well, yeah, if you haven't prepared for it. But on a certain level, you're going to progress to a certain point because you always got to show progression. Because if you just keep doing the same things, you're not going to get different results.
Yeah. So we talked about, watching you bench that 675, that undoubtedly wasn't the first time you thought about doing that, right?
No.
In your head, even, Leroy benched that morning, and then he benched the day before that too. And it's probably safe to say that you've lifted that weight multiple times in your head, hundreds, maybe even thousands of times. Maybe when it's at that 7 o'clock point, that's all you're thinking about. So you've already really done it. Now you just need to go out and do it and finish that process. Mm-hmm. This isn't only in bench pressing too. We hear a lot of powerlifters talking about this. It's almost like you've conditioned yourself to flip a switch.
Yeah.
Right. There's no thinking at that point. It's just doing.
Yeah.
Is that similar to your process?
It's very similar, and you'll see a lot of studies. And I mean, I'm not gonna make this into a scientific thing about theories or methodology, but there's a simplicity to it where, like you said, it really becomes automatic. You take, say for example, you look at SEAL Team 6 or a Navy sniper, a SEAL sniper, they can shoot up to a mile, sometimes two, just take these ungodly shots, but they have a team and they've prepared. They've prepared themselves to the point where you work past the failures, you work past the what ifs, you work past the self-doubt, and you have it's a certain line, not a cockiness, but you have a strong confidence in your ability, and you have to. And it carries over, kind of like with the kabuki, it carries over to no matter what you're going to do in life. If you don't have a certain self-worth, a certain self-love, a certain confidence for what you're trying to do, you're never going to accomplish anything great. Right. And a lot of that, like I said, it comes to the prep work that, and we'll get into this in a minute, but it talks about prep work for, a 10-week training cycle versus the day of a meet. And to me, it's all one and the same. Not only do you prepare differently for the day of the meet, but each day you step into that gym, if you have your one heavy day, you are prepping, whether you want to admit it or not. Whether you prepare or you don't prepare. If you don't prepare for success, you're preparing yourself ultimately for failure.
Right.
And a lot of people, they don't think about it like that. They want to make excuses. They want the pat on the back. They want to be told that, oh, it's okay, better luck next time. Well, that's great, but if you let it snowball into week 2, week 3, week 4, and before you know it, 10 weeks, you had 6 shitty training sessions.
Over a month, yeah.
How can you prepare, how can you expect to go into a meet and have different results? And it really comes down to, I think especially with the upper echelon lifters or the elite lifters, just holding yourself accountable. You owe it to yourself that if you know you have nothing else to do besides make a couple phone calls, make sure your team is there, do what if you have to pay a camera, whatever you have to do to prepare, you owe it to yourself to do that because you're the professional.
Yeah.
It is your job. You can't just expect to eat shitty and fuck off your whole day and go to the gym and pop in some Metallica and C4 and then, bam, all of a sudden you're, He-Man. It doesn't happen like that. It's mental prep, and you got to be able to prepare to go through that on a daily basis.
Yeah. So that's an awesome point. So not only for elite level athletes are we talking about this, but what do you think about people who are trying to get to that point, right? You can't just go into the gym and crush some, caffeine and then go kill your workout and expect, that to continue. Mm-hmm. So how would you coach someone, who's not at the elite level, but who's, maybe a solid intermediate lifter, coach them on developing that process or developing that mental attitude? What steps can they take to begin to make that their normal kind of default setting?
I think it comes down to a couple of major factors, and that's one, you got to clearly distinguish yourself and have it be understood that you are the coach, mm-hmm. that you're not the friend, you're coach. If it's coach, if it's Coach Chris, if it's Coach Walker, you got to be able to respect that and understand that I'm going to push you. I'm not Willy Wonka. I'm not here to sugarcoat shit.
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you like it is. And we're in such a PC society where sometimes that's not acceptable. People want to go and especially, and I'm not knocking this when I say this, but so many people go into a sport like CrossFit where they go and they do these WODs and everybody's doing it and everybody pats each other on the back and Susie's behind, but we're going to help. That's great.
Yeah.
Kumbaya, fuck, that's awesome. You know what I mean? But when it comes down to you on that platform, the bar's not going to lie. You have to be accountable. And it doesn't matter if you're a lead or not. If you want to aspire to do something great, then you have to, one, accept accountability, and two, you have to understand it is a process. You're not going to climb Mount Everest in a day. It might take a week, it might take a month. But if you prepare and you hold yourself accountable to the outcomes, to the consequences of your action, because if you don't prepare, we talked about you're preparing to fail if you're not preparing to exceed. If you can accept that there's going to be good consequences, bad consequences, but ultimately you hold yourself accountable and you have some stick-to-itiveness, then eventually you're going to get there.
Yeah.
Because you have to prepare to stick with something over the long haul. Becoming a champion, becoming the best, it doesn't just happen overnight. Now there's some people that are phenoms. They go out there, their first meet. And that's the thing you got to look at. Is it really your first? Is it your first meet? Are you a novice lifter? Or have you been lifting for years and you just decided to compete? That's why you have to look internal and look at yourself. You can't go out there and compare yourself to everybody because you don't know what everybody's training regimen is. Chris and yourself, you guys made a good point the other day where so many people, they want to go, and these are great methods. They want to study, Louis Westside, and they want to read the books from front to back, or they buy, Brandon's awesome cube method, mm-hmm. and they do everything. Well, you don't know what his mentality was going into that cycle when he wrote that book, or where he was at in his career, what his goals were. You can look and you can apply the numbers and the theory, but you don't know what was going into it. That's why you just got to do your due diligence and go out there and learn from trial and error and just not give up. And, okay, I'm a shitty bencher. I'm going to become a CrossFitter. I can't do CrossFit. Now I'm going to become a cross country. So many people want to abandon stuff because they don't have instant success.
Yeah.
Success is not instant. If you want to have a legacy, it's a legacy. It's long lasting. It's not get rich quick or get famous quick. It's something that you have to have substance. You have to be invested in it. And a lot of people don't understand. If you can't invest in the sport, you're cheating yourself because it's so much bigger than you or me. It's an investment in life.
Yeah.
And you owe it to yourself to make that kind of commitment.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point. It's totally about the process. Right, and you develop that process through the years of lifting. Some people might have it, and it comes more natural to them. Others have to build that over time, mm-hmm. And then when you do get to those upper levels, it's just about building that and reinforcing it and going and going mm-hmm. and going. So one thing that I'm interested to know. So when you're training, right, and you carry that same mentality, nothing changes when you go into your meet. Right, you might feel there might be some competitiveness there that wasn't in the gym, but the same process is all the same, right? So every time you're going into a training session, it's practice, right? It's practice for when it actually matters. So we're probably about wrapping it up here, but if we can leave them with, unfortunately, a lot of the people who are probably seeing this video don't have the opportunity to work under, a coach such as yourself or Chris or any other elite powerlifter. So someone who's maybe training on their own in a commercial setting or outside of a group of lifters or someone who doesn't have a team, how can they build that process for themselves? How can they approach their training in a way that builds that process for the long term?
You know, that's just first you got to be willing to venture out a little bit. There's some great facilities. I mean, I train at a commercial gym. I make no mistake at it. You see me here, you might see me at Metroflex. You know, but for the most part, 90% of my training is done at a commercial gym.
Yeah.
You know, 24-hour gym where there's no powerlifting apparatuses, there's no chalk, there's not even a Texas bar, there's no bands, there's no change. But you can't let it limit you. You got to be creative. But when it comes to preparing for a meet, a lot of people that do train in the sport, and let's be honest, like I'm happy to be part of the USPA, and I'm not very shy about saying that. I think it's one of the greatest federations because it incorporates and it gives somebody the opportunity. I'm for any federation that's going to give people the opportunity to lift on the platform, to experience success, and then to turn around and to pay it forward. Yeah. And with that being said, UPA, don't quote me on this, but it's got, let's just say 5,000 plus members. Not everybody is Brandon Lilly or Dan Green. Not everybody is on elite status.
Yeah.
So what's that mean? You might have 200 elite lifters. So that means you have 4,800 lifters that are trying to become great, and I applaud that. And with that being said, you have to know that you just have to dig in and you have to start.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to venture out. You can't, and out of that number, maybe half of those people train at elite facilities, like a Barbell Brigade, like a Kabuki Strength, like a Metroflex, some of the other gyms out there. But you can't let it be an excuse.
Right.
You have to take it's like, say, for example, I live not too far from Metroflex. I knew Metroflex was going to have some meets. Go down there, see what the environment's like, see what the equipment's like you're going to use. You can't just say, oh, I'm used to a commercial gym, and now I have to lift on a Forza, and now it's different. Or I'm used to rubber weights or iron weights, and now I got to use Avanco plates. You know what? The meets are put on, and they try to give you the best opportunity to be in the best situation to lift with the best equipment.
Right.
For the most part, most federations do. So understand that in hindsight, it's really a good thing. If you train under shitty conditions with like subpar equipment, you should be able to go in and have success.
Just blast it, yeah.
And if you don't let it become that bitchy, whiny spare tire that's always going to hold you down. Because long after you leave the platform, you're going to continue to do that in life.
Yeah.
You're going to make excuses. I didn't have the best coach. I didn't have the best instructor. I didn't have the best equipment. I didn't have the best, I didn't have Nike Tomelo shoes. I didn't have Rogue. You know what? Neither did I. I started in Chucks. I started with no wrist wraps. I've never had a formal coach. And I'm not trying to say pat myself on the back, but when you weigh it down to how many people compete, I'm the average. I'm the normal guy. But you got to find it in yourself to rise above that.
Yeah. So that's an awesome point, especially with how powerlifting and strength sports is becoming more marketable. There's more products entering the market, right? With those products, people feel like they have to have those.
Yeah.
They have to have the shoes. They have to have this belt. They have to have, whatever wrist wrap or knee wrap. But at the end of the day, you have to really want it. And it can happen. If you're strong, you're strong. And it as you show, it doesn't matter the facility, you make it work.
Yeah. And that's a great point. I think a lot of people hide behind what they do or don't have, and I'll be honest when I say it. Yeah, I have sponsors. I have access to great equipment. I have access to great coaching, but you have to put in the work, and it's not going to make you great. It's going to make you better. And I'll give credit. Brandon Lilly said this once. It was a different way he said it, but for the most part, the bulk and the mass of what he said is, no matter what kind of equipment, no matter what kind of supplements you run, if you're average, you're going to be a little bit average. You're not going to become Superman. And if you're great, you might become a little bit greater. But it all comes down to your foundation and how much work and blood and sweat and tears are you willing to put out there. Because when it all comes down to it, you can take the shoes, you can take the singlet, you can take the belt, you have a way, and what do you have at the end of the day? If you're a shitty lifter, you're a shitty lifter. If you're great, then you're still going to be great. But it comes down to being able to look yourself in the mirror and just be brutally honest.
Right.
And say, am I a product of what self-hype I've built myself up to be? Or have I paid my dues and I've put in work? If you've paid your dues and put in the work, then by all means, go out and get the Nikes. Go out and get the Pioneer belt. Go out and get the shoulder rock. You know, if you have access to the best, by all means, take advantage of it.
Yeah.
But if you don't sit back and dare let it make, you know, feel sorry or throw yourself a pity party and make an excuse.
Hold yourself accountable.
Hold yourself. It all comes down to accountability.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, I think we're about ready to wrap it up here. Really awesome stuff on how Leroy approaches the mental game of, you know, holding 700 pounds above your chest. So before we leave today, is there anywhere that our viewers can find more about you? Do you have a YouTube channel?
I do have a YouTube channel. It's mostly just highlight lifts, nothing in depth. We got some good stuff. So there's going to be some great content coming out on this channel. You guys stay tuned. You'll definitely see more of me. You guys can go to my Instagram if you want to see some of my daily stuff at LW The Machine. But for the most part, for this type of content, the in-depth stuff, the not the rah-rah, the not all the antics, you're going to see some really good information, not by myself, but many well-known, published doctors, other strength and conditioning athletes, and people on this channel. 2016 is going to be an awesome year.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys just stay tuned. You're going to see content and conversations and topics that are being tackled on head first, no filter, not candy coated like you're not going to see anybody else. You know, I'll say it, this is not a podcast. This is going to be an informational just mecca for various different disciplines, and I'm excited and both thrilled and humbled to be a part of it.
Yeah. One closing point, that I was on your YouTube channel, you know, a couple days ago, and one of the craziest things to see is, you know, 6 plates loaded while you're benching, while there's, you know, every other random gym goer in a commercial setting behind you, and they're like, what the fuck is that, you know? So check them out if you haven't. Leroy Walker, thanks for spending time with us.
Thank you.
If you want to maximize your strength and the longevity of your athletic career, or just support the production of further content, click on this video to the link to our store to check out our full line of products.